Hi, everybody. It's Michelle Jackson. I am here for a Pen Posse interview with an amazing author. Diane Marie Brown is here to talk with us about her book, Black Candle Women, and such a fascinating book, just a family drama with a twist of Louisiana voodoo. And we're going to talk to her about her work. We're going to talk about the book itself, what inspired her, as well as her next steps and her publishing and marketing. So I'm really excited to be here with you, really excited to have her, and let's welcome her on the screen. Hi, Diane. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for being here with us. All of the great independent authors that we have on the Black Writers Workspace. We are here just to learn from you and to soak up all your knowledge and hopefully to be inspired to continue to do the work that we're doing. Congratulations on all the things that you have accomplished. It has been amazing to just watch you. You've participated in our workshop last year, sharing your knowledge with us, and now you're here to talk about your book, Black Candle Women. And I just wanted to show that book to everyone, how beautiful the cover is, and really get an opportunity to connect with you and talk about this work. So, for those of you who hadn't read it, I do encourage you to go out there and get a copy. Read this book. It is such an amazing story about it's just an intergenerational family dynamic with multiple generations of women who live together. And we're going to let Diane give us, a little bit more about the book. But I can tell you that if you're interested in a book that will talk about womanhood and sisterhood and togetherness, as well as finding love and mix that all in with a little bit of voodoo and mysticism from here in New Orleans. This is a fantastic tale. So, Diane, tell us about yourself and tell us about your work.
Sure. Well, actually, before I do that, I just want to thank you for having me here. I enjoyed um, uh, talking with the group before, and I just appreciate everyone appreciates all that you do for writers.
Thank
So
you.
yes. Um, so now I forgot I forgot your question.
Tell us about your work. Tell us about yourself and tell us
Got it.
about your work.
Okay. So, I have wanted to be a writer. I had wanted to be a writer for a really long time. And actually, I look back and I'm like, you know what? I was a writer for a really long time because if you're putting in the work, you are a writer. So, it took me a long time to think of myself as such, but I think what I really wanted was to write stories and share them with other people in some kind of form. And so I tried out a lot of different things. I wrote a couple of books many, many years ago, had gotten to the point where I got an agent, but that agent was never able to sell that particular book. I worked on some other things. I did a blog. I wrote an online soap opera with episodes that posted every day that I wrote, using my friends as kind of the images for the characters. Um, I I just liked to write stories, but at
Mhm.
some point I decided, if I really want to take this seriously, I need to work on my craft. So I went back to school. My background is in public health, and I still work in public health. I teach public health and have worked at uh, county and local health departments. So always doing that work, but decided to go back to school while working to get a degree in creative writing. So I did that, and that kind of changed, I think, my understanding of what stories should be doing. I think I was just kind of writing scenes, but I wasn't building plots, and I wasn't adding tension, all those things that we as storytellers at some point understand that we need to do. Sometimes, because I think a lot of things that I was reading, that I was studying as a writer, they would do these things, but they kind of did it so you didn't realize, because they were just telling the story so well, you didn't realize that all those intricacies that were in the story. So I feel that just for me, and not everybody has to do this, but for me, the decision to go back to school, I thought would be the best way for me to really kind of up my game. And there are a lot more resources and tools out now. Podcasts weren't, even podcasts weren't really a thing back then. So being in that environment, meeting other writers, getting feedback on my work really helped me out a lot. And that is where I started this book. And it ended up being my thesis. However, it didn't necessarily mean that this book was ready to be published and I was just going to find an agent right away and get it published right away. That journey took 10 years, more than 10 years, but before I got to the point where I had a contract. And so there was a lot of work with revisions, getting feedback, getting a lot of no's from agents that I pitched to, being close, but not quite getting there. And so Black Candlewoman was actually a book that I had put away on a shelf, and I had started writing something else. But an opportunity came in the summer of 2020 when businesses, organizations were looking to better connect with, well, in this case, Black writers, tell Black stories because of what was going on in the world with COVID, and then, of course, with George Floyd. And so there was a particular publishing house that put out a call for unagented Black fiction, or any Black writers who didn't have agents, understanding that there are barriers and challenges for us getting our work to agents, and being taken, seen in the same light as other writers. And so I was like, well, I already have this book. I had stopped thinking about it. Well, I never stopped thinking about it because I love the stories and I love my characters, but I had kind of given up because I had gotten so many no's, and I wasn't quite sure what I needed to fix or how I needed to fix it, because with agents, they're just, you're lucky if you get a response, right? They're just overwhelmed and busy and definitely don't have the time to give feedback. So that's really what this opportunity was, is Great In-House Books said that they would give feedback to Black writers who didn't have agents, and there might be a possibility that they could end up publishing a few of the books. They said they weren't going to make any promises, though. But that is ultimately how I connected with an editor there. My editor had interest in my query and my sample pages, and she asked for the entire manuscript. Months and months went by. I think they got about 800 submissions over a 2-month period in the summer. And it took about 5 or 6 months for her to get back and let me know that they wanted to publish the book. And at that point, they also said they would help me find an agent, because they wanted to do the negotiation with an agent. So I was able to connect with my wonderful agent. And then it's just been kind of a surreal journey since then. So
excellent. Yeah. That is excellent. Thank you. I love the transparency transparency and teaching us, your process of how you were able to get your book deal. But the results of all your work is just so amazing. Your book is now being adapted into a TV. Is a TV series or a TV movie?
It's being pitched as a series.
A
So yes,
series.
yes.
That is so excellent. And read with Jenna Bush actually selected your book as one of her picks. So you've been on the Today Show, you've done media, you've had a hell of a year. And I'm so excited to just watch it. And reading your book, though, I was so excited to get an opportunity to speak with you about it because I just want to dig into the book a little bit. Let's talk
Okay.
about this amazing book. I mean, you take the book from New Orleans to California, and you have these multiple generations women who are living together, and they are all struggling because of a curse. So we're not going to do any spoilers here, but I will just say that. So there's a curse, there's a voodoo curse that is kind of the antagonist in this story. Talk to me about your relationship with New Orleans and why you wanted to set the scene in New Orleans. And you do such a fantastic job of talking about the culture here, the food. I'm sorry, I live in New Orleans, so this is so exciting to me. But you talk about the food, the culture, and this amazing, indescribable mysticism that's in New Orleans. And so you capture all these things very well. But talk to us a little bit about your connection with New Orleans and why that meant a lot to you.
Yes. So definitely one of my favorite places, one of my favorite cities. My parents are both from Louisiana. My mom is from a town called Bogalusa, and my dad is from Baton Rouge. And they met each other at Southern University and married after they graduated and ended up moving to California because my dad was stationed here. He was in the military. And then they ended up settling, they both became educators and ended up settling in the Central Valley of California. So my dad was an administrator, but my mom was an elementary school teacher. So she had the summers off. So every summer we would travel to New Orleans to visit her beloved brother, my Uncle Raymond, who by then had moved to New Orleans. And we would just stay there for a week or 2 weeks. Every summer, to the point where I had friends there, and they, we looked forward to seeing each other every summer. We'd hang out. I'd bring all my Barbie dolls because we traveled by train. So there's a train in the book, and that also is connection to my story. But yeah, so it just always has been this special place for me. I have a lot of nostalgia for New Orleans, especially just because it was so different from where I grew up. In Stockton, where I lived, and the high school or the schools that I went to, the neighborhood that I lived in, there weren't a lot of Black people that I would see just on my day-to-day life. There are Black people in Stockton, but just the area where I lived and the schools that I went to. And so when I would go to New Orleans, that I felt like, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Mhm.
They had BET. We didn't even have BET in Stockton at the time. So I just loved the culture, different types of food that I didn't have at home, and just love seeing my mom connect with her family, because she didn't have family in California, was really special as well.
Excellent, excellent. For those of you out there, you can drop your questions and we can get to those. We are live, so please put your questions in on Facebook or YouTube, and we will definitely get to those questions. It's a rare opportunity to have Ms. Brown with us to talk about her book, and this book has been really fascinating to me for a number of reasons. I mean, the Montrose women, a close knit group of women who are all living together in California and struggling with this curse that has impacted the family, and has created so much secrecy and drama for all of them. And I must admit, when I read the book, I thought about my mother. I thought about my aunts. I thought about our relationship with one another, and the fact that so often in these families where we have these great grandmothers and mothers and aunts who are always protecting us and watching over us and loving us, we forget that they're just women, right? They're women who have struggled, who have had lost loves and secrets and have told lies and everything in between. And so that was something that was very interesting to me. So the question I have is, in this story, as you explore the complexities of female relationships within the culture and the rituals, the ritual confounds of the family, what did you want the readers to walk away having learned about female to female relationships? Because I felt like that was the real story here. What did you want the reader to learn?
Oh, wow. That's a really great question. I haven't been asked this question before, so that's really neat. Well, I just feel that female relationships they're just so important. At least for me as a woman, those are the relationships that I've nurtured the most, starting with my connection to my mom. Um, and I also had a beloved aunt. And so I really want to showcase the aunt niece relationship, because I just think it's a special connection, right? You have somebody who's like a mother figure, but doesn't have to be so limited, can go out of the bounds of what we think a mother needs to do with their daughters or with their child. So that was a special relationship that I wanted to highlight. And then I also wanted it was kind of a method for me I'm an only child, so I did a lot of pretend. I had a lot of imaginary friends. But I didn't have grandparents, and I always wanted grandparents, because I would see people with their grandmothers and their grandfathers, and seeing my children with my parents, and again, just such an important relationship. So it was a way for me to kind of play around with, I don't know what that might look like if I had had that in my life. But I wanted to see relationships between these family members that can have challenges, that can deal with some major issues, but they could forgive, they could move on, they could have understanding and empathy for one another. And they could appreciate the different ways that they deal with their lives and make their decisions. So I think those are probably the key things that I really wanted to show with the female women relationships in the story.
I feel like that was such a powerful piece of the book, was to see the dynamics of these relationships. I did not have a grandmother around as well. And so it was very interesting to see how the bantering between the sisters was really good and realistic to me, between Victoria and Willow, and then the daughter and what she dealt with in not understanding the dynamics of the family and the curse. It was very unique and in a great way to talk about the family, particularly the Black family, because like I said, so often we have these ideas of what we have these ideas of what that should look like, but a lot of times there is quite a bit of pull and push in these types of relationships, especially when you're under the same roof. So I thought that was so dynamic. Let's talk a little bit about voodoo, because I really enjoyed that component of it as well. But my question to you is, what was the real role of voodoo in the book? was it real, or was this more about fear? I'm not going to give it up. I know, guys, if you got to go read it to understand what I'm asking, but I am just interested in the character development and understanding the role, because what kept me turning the pages about the book is wondering, is this a real thing, or is this more about the fear that they had, fear of loss, of losing love, fear of losing each other, that fear of separation. So, if you don't mind, without giving too much,
Mhm.
define the relationship, or what was the role of voodoo in your book?
Yeah, I think it aligns. Well, it really was a look at their beliefs and how strongly they believed in something had absolute impact on how they behaved. So I think
Mhm.
with all the women, if you kind of think about a spectrum of how much we have a person in the house that has a very, very strong um, belief and daily practice with voodoo. You have somebody on the other extreme who thinks it's all hogwash, and she lives her life in a very different. I'm talking about Madeline, who lives her
Mhm.
life in a very, very different way than her daughter Victoria, who's on the other extreme. And I think all the other women are sort of in the middle, and thinking about um, the decisions that they make, you kind of see them move up and down this spectrum. So, starting with Augusta, who is the matriarch of the family. And with her story, we go back to 1950s New Orleans and hear about the curse's origin. And even there, there's when she's younger, maybe she doesn't believe what voodoo might say, or what if these curses could be really true, but then it has an impact on her, and so that kind of shifts her beliefs one way, but then she's living her life and her belief kind of wanes a little bit. And so I think that is where the connection is with their faith and how it governs the decisions that they make.
Absolutely. I thought that was excellent. And you talk about New Orleans, and you talk about voodoo and the culture, and you do such a great job of capturing all those things. Well, I live in New Orleans. I'm an outsider. I wasn't, born here. And the one thing I know about the city is that they are very prideful about their culture. Did you worry about getting it wrong in any way, and how people in New Orleans would handle, or whether or not you can garner their support if you do get some things wrong? And I ask this question because I have a book, a children's book, and my character is also from New Orleans. And just living here, I know how much pride there is, but there it also is a fine line between what is considered acceptable to write about or to talk about when you're not from here, and what isn't. So did you concern yourself with any of that, or did you have anyone to come back and say, no, that's not right, that's not how we do this, any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's an issue. I have some writer friends, and we talk a lot about, you know, what what are we allowed to write about, right? Um, can you write about somebody else? Can you have characters that have a background, a culture, an experience that is different from your own? Um, Absolutely, right? Or else, I hope that I don't get to just have stories about Black women, for the
Right.
rest of my life.
Hmm.
That's probably my comfort place, but I definitely want to explore. But I think what what we need to do is take a lot of care when we are writing about cultures that might be different than our own or have characters with experiences much different than our own, do research and talk to people, get input, get feedback. And so that's what I tried to do. I did a lot of quite a bit of research. And you don't want to do so much research that you never get to the writing, which can happen sometimes, but you want to take care to be comprehensive. And sometimes I'd read things that one text says one thing, somebody else has a different interpretation, so I just had to do my best. And I reached out and I found the person that wrote the key book that I read, talked to her and got some feedback. And she helped a lot with pronunciations, which was really kind of her, because she didn't have to respond to my email. But just talking to people, I think, is really important. And it's funny. I did a TikTok early on, and I think I said New Orleans, and somebody said, we don't say New Orleans, we say New Orleans. And so just, I didn't even pick it up, but just being very careful, that is meaningful. That means you're an outsider if you are saying the name of our city wrong. And so I have definitely tried to be very cognizant of my pronunciations since then. And if I make a mistake, then I will own it and do better, right? I think that's all that we can do. But yes, I still have concerns about getting something wrong. But I think I worked really hard to try to get things as right as possible.
Well, I tell you, you did a great job. The way you captured the food and the atmosphere, you really did a great job. But it's just part of, like you said. I ran into a situation where I posted something online and I said NOLA, and I got the whole we don't say NOLA. So
Right.
I was like, I completely understand. So those are some of the things, and I'm just happy to hear you talk about this, because as writers we have so many different levels, so many different layers of things to get right. It's the writing is one thing, and then the storytelling, and then it's the exposing parts of yourself in characters. It's the development of it and owning it, and the being authentic. It's just so many layers to it. So it's just good to know. I love that you said, I don't want to be put in a box where I can only write about Black women. That means a lot to me as well. I think as creatives, we should be allowed to write all the characters that we choose to write. Someone on the screen said, when writing about voodoo hoodoo as practice in the South, it is so syncretic, that there are different beliefs about what the standard. It can be challenging. Absolutely. And I felt that way too when I was reading. I was like, this had to be difficult to, to go into, kind of unearth this idea of voodoo in this way, where it can be perceived by people who practice it differently, by people who don't understand it different, by people who think it's anti, Christian, or like those types of things can sometimes sway the writing. But I love that you stay very consistent with that. So thank you for, who's that? Shelton, thank you for posting. Anybody out there, if you have any comments, please put them up. We want to talk to her. Let's talk about your character development. You've got Villanova and Nana Augusta and Victoria and Willow and Nikki, and I'm still missing Madeline. She wasn't on my list because she kind of came in towards the middle. Talk to me about these characters. I know you said these are characters that were part of your pretend world of family, and building this world. And all books are very personal. I just want to say that to everybody. There is always that personal aspect of it. But who's your favorite character? And if you had to lead the movie or the series that's being created, whose life would you build the series around primarily?
All right. You got these good questions, Michelle. Um, so I have 4 daughters, and they all think I have a favorite daughter, and I don't, but I do sort of kind of have a favorite character. I have my favorite to write is kind of a tie. Um, but out of the primary characters, whose points of view the book is written from, my favorite was Augusta.
Mhm.
Uh, Mostly because I liked going back to New Orleans and seeing her younger and then comparing her to her current um, self. And her current self is not, she's not able to speak.
Mhm.
And so that was a limitation that, as a writer, not having her be able to engage in dialogue traditionally, uh, I thought that was kind of fun to play with. And somebody who had this, not been able to speak for decades. So she had gotten used to operating this way, and the family had gotten used to it. But I really like that that gave us an opportunity to really get into how she thought about things. She's, of course, very introspective. Everything that we hear about, learn about her is introspective. So, and she still found a way to communicate with her family. So I enjoyed writing her. But I also just love Madeline as well, because
Mhm.
she made me laugh.
Well, you know, Madeline, I think balanced the book. There are
Right.
two that those are the two things that you did that I thought was very wise and intuitive to think about the reader. Is that Nana Augusta did not speak. So we did not get an overload of another dialogue because there was already heavy dialogue with Nikki and Willow and Victoria. And so to have her not speak almost made her such a powerful player in this. And it also did not crowd out the dialogue. And then Madeline comes in and she was like, the auntie I grew up with. You know, she
Right.
was the sassy. She was the one who's like laid back and let's eat. I don't really want to, let's relax. Why are we up in the air about this? And that character was more that connected with me in a
Hmm.
big way. I don't know. It was just, and I wasn't expecting her. Okay, I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting her. So that also helped to kind of balance the conversations, the
Hmm.
silent power that Nana Augusta had, but also the constant dialogue between Willow and Victoria and then Nikki. So it was really good. Here's a good question. Someone will a comment here. That's a question. It says, after writing the book on such a heavy spiritual matter, did you have a hard time coming out of it? I love that question. Much like when actors take on a role and afterwards they still feel like the character is a part of them.
Um, I would say, well, less because of the spiritual matter, um, because I felt like that was really, I put a lot of myself into, I think, like some of the rituals and the curses. And so I could kind of see myself in it rather than, I don't know if that makes sense. Um, but it was more the characters in the world. Um, I was just always thinking about them. And so, I'm writing and then I have a thought and I'm dreaming of these women. I'm thinking of something that somebody says. And so I'm frantically trying to like find my phone and write it down. And so that's how they stayed with me. It was,
Mhm.
um, yeah, and I know some people definitely kind of feel like a heaviness if they're writing something that has that sort of element, or it's dramatic. But for me, I was just more thinking, I think, about their um, the individual characters, and what might they say in this situation, or what if this happened to them. And it's funny, like, right. So I'm working on my next book right now, and I am just so in that world that I'm thinking about them all the time now, which is, I kind of like being in that place, because
Mhm.
again, it's kind of it's a situation that it's this, for this story, there are some heavier elements, but that's not what's really on my mind all the time. So I think it kind of just happens to us as writers, because we build these worlds and they are real to us.
They are, and the characters begin to speak to you, and it feels it's an amazing feeling. I've written 3 books myself, and it really is an amazing feeling as this you develop this story, it begins to take on a life of itself, and so you can definitely dive into that and miss some things going on in your real world because you're
Right.
so in tune to the book. So that's a great question, Shelton. Let's talk also about we talked about we talked about the women, we talked about voodoo, we talked about New Orleans, but we haven't talked about is 2 things I would love to cover. Well, 3 more things, but one is men in the book. Have you gotten any backlash over the fact that no man survived or was positive? Can I say that positive, a positive influence in the book? Did you think of was that something that anyone has ever brought up to you, or was a problem for you in building this? And I never thought about it until I started writing out my questions. I said, you know what? I don't think anybody survived. I don't think anybody was left there except for Victoria's friend, who she was beginning to build a relationship with. Have you had
Yes.
any backlash over that?
I, I've had some questions that
Mhm.
asked, probably not backlash, but
Yeah.
people are, might ask, well, do you think, is that what you think of men, or are men just kind of, side pieces in this story, and or they're just, I don't know. But those just happen to be the men that are in this story, and I forget who I was talking to, I think a book club the other day, and they had kind of started going there, but uh somebody countered. They're like, well, the women are just, you could say they're just as bad in some ways,
Mhm.
thinking about one of the men in the story, is a, um, young man named Dudley Lee, who makes a poor decision, but he's very young, and
Mhm.
you think about what you're doing when you, some of the decisions that you might have made at 19 or 20 or 21. um it didn't make him a bad person. He just made some bad choices. Now there are other, then we have January and some other people who, yes, they are they're pretty bad guys. But I feel like, just like with some of the women, I don't think they were bad people. They made probably not the best choices, but with their mindset, with their beliefs, with where they are at the time, that's what they thought um, was best. So
Excellent.
I think a couple of them might be redeemable.
There may be. I agree. I agree. I think they're redeemable. I mean, we can't be put in boxes. We have to tell the stories that come to us,
Yeah.
and it's just it's powerful though to see how they kind of pull apart and then pull together as a family. I thought that was very inspiring. So you talk about, you get this amazing opportunity to get this book deal. You're picked to be a book club selection. You're on the Today Show. You've got over 5,000 reviews. The book is doing well. Tell me about what has all this meant to you? What has all this changed? And what have you learned in this process?
Yes. Well, I definitely uh, have a and a true appreciation, maybe even a testimony about timing and God's timing, because I wanted to get my book published for, as I mentioned, for years and years and years. If I would have had my book published in 2014 or 2017 or 2019, that outcome would not have been the same. They, definitely 6-7 years ago, they didn't have book clubs, these kind of well-known book clubs like they do today. I'm sure I wouldn't have had the same agent. Social media was different back then, and just the way that you connect with readers. Not to say that I wouldn't have had a great outcome back then. Who knows, right? But I just feel like this was, and the work that I did with this particular editor, I thought was the revisions that we made, I thought really were impactful. So I just have come to understand that timing is important, and I just had to wait for the right time for this book. And I also am just very appreciative, and note the importance of other writers in my life, and what I've learned being I've been a part of a few different debut groups, people that debuted their books in 22 or 23. And a lot of us have major imposter syndrome, and we have the same anxieties and stresses and fears and worries. But it's because, we're just humans, right? We just have this passion to tell stories. We like to be creative. But other than that, we're just human beings trying to make it just like anybody else. And so just kind of taking those steps back, and I just want to appreciate the process, especially working on my next book. I'm realizing that that's what I love. I like the writing so much. Of course, of course you want to get your book out there. You want readers, but I also just like making up stories, and it's just wonderful to be able to share them and talk about them. That's, I think, aside from what I just said, just talking to people, going to book clubs, being on podcasts, and talking to other writers and readers. That's really been my favorite part of this whole journey.
Timing is everything. And I'm glad that you were patient. I'm glad that you put forth such a dynamic piece of work. I'm glad that you're working on another book too. Love, can't wait to see the TV series once it's ready and out. And excited to see you do so well. But one thing that I have always appreciated about you is the fact that when you were coming to New Orleans to Baldwin and Co., you DM me, and I didn't even know you. You didn't know me, and you were like, "Hey, I'm going to be at Baldwin and Co. bookstore. It's a Black-owned bookstore here in New Orleans." And you were like, "Hey, come out." And I remember Googling you after you sent that to me and thinking, "My gosh, this is such an accomplished writer, and you're just so down to earth, and you're so open and willing. You did the workshop for the Black Writers Workspace. You're here now, and I just hope that you always keep that, keep that ability to be accessible to writers, because we need to be inspired. We are rallying behind you.
Thank
We
you.
believe in what you're doing, and we're just grateful that you're willing to share with us on this platform and all platforms. I see you out there. You're very easy to talk to. So this, it's not just that it was simply timing, being in the right place at the right time, but it was having the right work at the right time, speaking to the right audience, and being ready to move forward. So, congratulations on all of that. And thank you so much for being with us. Any final words for our writers and readers out there about tell us what you're doing next, what we can support you in, and just anything you want us to know, and tell us how to get your book as well.
Sure. Well, once again, the book is Black Candle Women. Should be available at major bookstores. You can order it through your favorite indie bookstore. And also I've heard that the audiobook is that people like the audiobook. The narrator is Bonnie Turpin, which she's a wonderful narrator. She's done a lot of really great books, and so that's just another way. I've been doing a lot of audiobooks lately because I want to read more, and that's the best way for me to be able to do so. So yeah. And it's kind of funny, just kind of thinking just like about something to share with other writers, is just kind of, that's what I'm doing on this book, thinking about that audio piece as you write, right? Really thinking about how, what you write might be heard if somebody is reading it out loud, which that's going to be what happens when a reader does read it. They're going to read it in their own voice. But I think just kind of that shift in thinking that, there's a lot more audiobooks that are being produced every year. Sometimes you even see contracts where there's an audiobook separate deal from the print version. So just thinking about the trends that we see happening. Not that we should write to the trend, like topic wise, but just that's just something that I'm kind of keeping in mind as I write, having that ear, making sure that what I'm writing will translate well to an audiobook.
Well, that is great advice. I 100% agree. I'm in the process of getting my book turned into an audiobook, so really excited to have that done. Your book was the first novel that I listened to on an audiobook, so I was really excited and really intrigued by how well I was able to just listen and understand and build those characters in my mind. And so I already know what Nana Augusta looks like. Okay, I already know her. So this is really good. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of the PM Posse podcast with Diane Marie Brown. Please go out and get her book and support her. And when it's a TV series, please watch it and rate it and do everything we can do to support her, because that's what we do at the Black Writers Workspace. So thank you all. Stay with me so I can give you a formal farewell. Take care, everyone.